It's a vital test for Wiltshire, who will have to finish in the first two places of the state championships to qualify for the Aussie titles, which are the first leg of the World Championships. It means the pace will be hectic, with riders vying to make the final cut for the bigger races. While Wiltshire is hot favourite, another Novocastrian, Stephen Davies, will be testing him, as will Sydney riders Mick Poole and Craig Boyce. Also at the Motordrome tonight, Formula 500s, compact speed cars and a giant demolition derby where the last car running picks up $1,000 in prize money.
All roads led to the beach today as children flocked to the ocean to test ride those new Christmas presents. On shore, Newcastle looked like a city of umbrellas as parents sought shelter from a cruel sun. But there was no escaping the glare from tribes of young surfers who gleefully showed off their new fluorescent wardrobes. Out to sea, the tribal elders showed how it was done, while back on land, the tiny tots took their first tentative steps on unsure sea legs. For some, the excess of the festive season had taken its toll, but then again, the same could be said for the beach itself. Lake Macquarie was a sea of action today as competitors in the Australian Cherub titles jockeyed for position at the starting line. It was only an invitational race designed to allow sailors from outside the area to experience local conditions firsthand before the heats. But the competitive instinct came to the forefront and the sailing was intense. The 50-strong fleet will sail a series of 7 heats to determine the national champion, and local knowledge should see some hometown sailors challenging for the title.
Our local fleet's been going very fast this season, and we've got a really good chance with about 6 or 7 boats of doing well in the titles.
Many competitors will be using the event to fine-tune their craft before the world titles in New Zealand next January. Meanwhile, those contesting the Heron and Skate titles spent the day getting their craft weighed and measured before the start of official racing later in the week. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
The big retailers reported a disturbingly slow build-up to Christmas, but the final week was above expectations. While Sydney retailers reported that recession fears had dampened sales enthusiasm, Newcastle shoppers defied the trend, buying big before and after Christmas Day. They were out in force early this morning, eager to find discounted goods and prepared, to the surprise of salespeople, to pay cash. Garden City and Katara estimated takings will be up by almost 18% on last year. A steady stream of customers continued throughout the day, and by early afternoon more than 22,000 people had visited the centre. Charlestown Square reported almost identical trading, estimating a similar upswing on last year's sales. And the Hunter Mall was thronging with shoppers, especially at lunchtime. David Jones' management said the traditional rush was just like old times, and once again customers were presenting cash for most purchases. Department stores reported strong interest in menswear and women's lingerie, but elsewhere shoppers were after any reductions, and more importantly, they were leaving satisfied that they had paid for bargains.
Yeah, I found some good bargains today. Yeah, pretty good.
Oh, most definitely, yes. Yes, I got what I wanted. Yes.
Have you found any bargains? No, not really. I'm sure my wife has those. I'm trying to find her now.
And retailers are expecting another surge of shoppers this evening with the added bonus of late night trading. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
When the earthquake struck Newcastle a year ago tomorrow, the Workers' Club was the scene of horror and heroics. Royal Newcastle Hospital nurse Leslie Elvin was on her day off when she heard of the tragedy. She drove straight to the Workers' Club and worked alongside ambulance officers for most of the day. The nightmarish conditions are still a strong memory.
Lack of facilities and trying to manage with people that you really couldn't help at the time. It was very hard. I couldn't imagine what a war would really be like if it was greater than that. That was bad enough.
Today the ambulance officers said their thank yous with a meritorious service award.
Please accept the Ambulance Service of New South Wales esteem for your actions during the earthquake.
Another heroic figure was that of Norm Duffy, the man who, although trapped himself, found the courage to comfort and encourage those who lay around him in the rubble. Today he was presented with the never-before-awarded Regional Superintendent's Ribbon and Citation for Valour.
There has not been any person, whether it's been a member of the public or an ambulance officer, that has reached the criteria to warrant such an award.
Typically, Norm insists it's the ambulance officers themselves who deserve all the praise.
Yeah, they did a mighty job. That's what I said. I thank everyone, doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, rescue mob. They all, did a good job on me.
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
Terrible.
The police launch Intrepid works the coast between Morna Point and Nora Head and 300 kilometres out to sea. That's an area of 27,000 square kilometres and can often make a boat search seem like a needle in a haystack exercise. Tallying the figures for the year just past, the Intrepid was called to 82 search and recovery missions, which translates to 180 people rescued from danger and $3.5 million in boats, from sailboards to trawlers, towed to safety. Sergeant Bill Nicholson has served in the Water Police for 16 years.
1990 was the busiest that this section has.
There are more boats than ever heading out to sea, yachts travelling the coast and people fishing from runabouts. Water police are urging skippers to log their departure and estimated return times with the Volunteer Coastal Patrol and Coast Guard radio stations.
If they get onto a school of fish and they're going to stay a bit longer, it only takes a few seconds. You might miss one fish, but they can let them know that they're going to stay out to another certain time and they will give them a call when they're coming back in. If there is a breakdown in motor or fuel blockage or something minor happens or serious happens, we know where they are and how many people on board and the vessel that we're looking for.
John Pearson was hard at work today repairing a car he says was just too fast for the tight Lismore circuit he tried to put it around last night.
We got the front steering, spindles, rack and the rear axle housing, but we're right now. The car's going to be real quick. It was fast last night. That's probably why I got in the fence. It was just too quick. I wasn't prepared for it.
The American captain is keen to avenge last year's defeat at the Newcastle Motordrome, but he'll be facing some familiar opposition. John Pine and Peter Garrett will be back again this year, and they'll be joined by fellow locals Bob Brewer and Ron Pine. The four are usually arch rivals, and the Americans are hoping their more team-oriented approach will prove the difference.
There'll be more than a USA versus Australia. That'll be the main key, but the Aussies will be out to beat each other too, and that might be in our favour.
Last night, the Motordrome hosted the Johnny Hoskins Solo International, and the action was predictably fast and furious. American Sam Ermolenko survived this heart-stopping moment to record a brilliant win in the 5-lap final, while New Zealander Gary Allen took second and Chris Watson kept the Aussie flag flying in third.
Employees have been offered a 2.8% wage cut, which SPC says will save the company $2 million. Union leaders, however, oppose the move, describing it as a dangerous precedent for industrial relations. If the 1,200 workers accept the package, they'll face cuts in penalty rates and give up holiday loadings.
A feeding frenzy of tiny snapper fingerlings at the brackish water fish culture research station at Salamander. For the last 12 months, fisheries researchers have grown snapper under controlled scientific conditions, looking towards the 21st century when ocean stocks of fish are feared to dry up.
It's just a natural phenomenon around the world that fish populations are being overexploited. As the population of the earth grows, we're going to see our resource dwindle.
New South Wales waters are not suited to barramundi or Atlantic salmon, the only species commercially farmed in salt water. In an East Coast first, fisheries officers hope to farm these snapper in giant house-sized cages off the coast or in harbour estuaries. Adult females caught at sea are injected with a human sex hormone. 24 hours later, the fish's eggs, which can number thousands, are fertilised. 49 days later, with a special plankton diet, the fish reach the 40mm stage and are ready to be put out to pasture. Within 18 months, it's hoped the fish will reach plate size for market. European experiments with fish farming have proven a great success.
People are, in many cases, preferring the product because they know that it's disease-free or pesticide-free or whatever. They know the history of the product.
While the project is still at a very early stage, researchers are confident it will be a commercial winner. That means the coastline of Australia could be farmed for snapper as the inland is farmed for wheat and cattle. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Svensson showed plenty of class early, especially from the forehand. And then used his mighty backhand to grab a break in the first set. After dropping his opening serve of the second set, Van Rensburg lifted his game with his trademark volley. And he won the next 8 games with Entertainment Plus. Down 2-love in the deciding third set, Svensson finally got a break he was after. Then really applied the pressure to Van Rensburg. But the wily South African had a bit in reserve to outlast the Swede and remain undefeated. It was a different Ivan Lendl on day 2, and he signalled his intentions early. After breaking the Stieb serve in the first game, the world number 3 stepped up the pace. Charlie hit back, cranking up on a big forehand. But Lendl replied with an ace to take the first set 6-4. The tempo of the match lifted, and so did the standard. And with a slice of luck, Lendl broke. From there on, Lendl pressed home the advantage with good service returns and volleys, plus brilliant court coverage. Although he squandered 2 match points, he made no mistake with number 3.
All city routes led back to the bus depot this morning, when nearly half the 350 drivers met to voice their anger that an agreement over rest breaks had not been implemented. The dispute began in December '89 when drivers claimed a lack of breaks during shifts was causing them intolerable stress. This was backed by an independent survey released last October, which recommended prosecution of state transit if conditions were not improved. When this agreement was signed on the 13th of November, it looked as though the trouble was over. But now management and the union are at loggerheads over the interpretation of parts of the agreement. In simple terms, the drivers want around 12 minutes rest time for each hour and a half of driving. They agreed today that if this doesn't happen by the 29th of this month, they will take the time off anyway, throwing timetables into chaos. They will also refuse to collect fares.
One of the resolutions today was that if management didn't introduce the measures designed to relieve stress, that we should launch prosecutions under the Act, and it is our intention to do so.
But State Transit says there is not enough time to change the rosters and timetables before the end of the month, and have offered to go back to the drawing board over a new agreement.
if they take industrial action then on the 29th of January regardless, I think it just demonstrates, you know, the attitude that they have to try to resolve this issue.
The dispute goes before the Arbitration Commission later this month. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
The roar of the Aussie engines will linger long in the memories of the Americans, but it's a night they'd rather forget. The Hunter-based Australian side of Peter Garrett, Bob Brewer, John and Ron Pine gave the visitors an absolute lesson, racing to a 28-8 lead by the halfway mark. Most disappointing was American captain John Pearson, who failed to notch a point in the first stanza. He returned fired up to win 3 second-half heats, but there was no stopping the locals. They powered on to win by 49 points to 23, the biggest thrashing ever dealt out in a test match against the US. And if omens mean anything, the Yankees' bad luck might continue. The second test will be held on Australia Day.
Right from the outset, the likeable South African showed his net prowess to grab an early break. Lendl also ventured to the net on rare occasions with devastating effect, and he was equally at home with the lob. Van Rensburg